everyone, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Danmei Digest, where I talk about whatever Danmei novel catches my interest. I will be discussing Global Examination by Musu Li, translated by Rosmei. You can read the full summary of the book in this podcast description. If you do decide to read this book, you can already tell from the plot summary, but there is a lot of gory death and a very creepy atmosphere. I won't go into too much detail in this podcast, but we all have different levels of tolerance, so no worries if it's just not for you. As for me, interestingly enough, I can't stand horror movies. I watched one in theaters when I was younger, and that was it. However, I am a big fan of TV shows like Squid Games and Alice in Borderland, and I'm really enjoying a Danmei similar in vibe to this one called Kaleidoscope of Death. I love that with these types of books and TV shows, creativity is its lifeblood. As long as the author can keep coming up with creative new games and mysteries with twists and turns, this genre doesn't get old for me. Starting with our two main leads, we honestly don't know a lot about them. This book jumps right into it, with all the examinees appearing at a cabin in the middle of a snowstorm. One moment, they are living their lives, and the next they're here. Going out of the cabin means certain death, as one person who tried to leave died moments later. The main lead, You Huo, is one of those examinees. Two of his family members, his uncle and cousin, are also here at the examination. All the book tells us is that at some point You Huo was studying abroad and that he has lost some of his memories. If you listen to my previous podcast episodes, I've read another book by this author, Copper Coins. It's pure happenstance that I'm reading another one of their books. To make a long story short, the translation of the third book in this series has just become available, so I needed to see if I like this series before continuing to buy physical copies. But what I've realized is that this author really loves the amnesia trope. One of the main characters in Copper Coins also suffers from amnesia. Because of this, as I said earlier, we really don't know anything about You Huo. He comes off as very cold and unapproachable, but very intelligent. He doesn't seem to care very much for the lives of other people, but I don't think he wants unnecessary deaths. We aren't introduced to the other main character yet until later, so I'll just put a pin in that. Once the examinees are all in the cabin, the exam begins. The subject is physics, and they have to answer a series of questions to receive points. They have different rounds of questions that have a time limit. If they get 0 points during that round, someone will get punished and be removed from the exam site. Presumably that means they will die, but we don't actually know for sure. Right off the bat, two people break the rules by not using the proper writing utensil to answer the question. That's when we get introduced to our second main lead, an invigilator. Enter Qin Jiu, the lead invigilator of the group, also known as Invigilator 1. An invigilator is basically an exam proctor, and 3 of them show up to punish the two rule breakers. There seems to be a moment of recognition between Qin Jiu and You Huo, but we don't know why. Qin Jiu takes You Huo to be punished, despite him not actually being one of the 2 main rule breakers. It could be because of this unspoken connection between the 2 that he's taken to get punished, but that's not explicitly stated. The punishment is to relieve their worst fears. However, You Huo doesn't seem to have any. The room that he's put in remains empty, and he just decides to take a nap. 'Cause why not? Meanwhile, the other guy being punished is suffering through some pretty nasty things. All we hear is screaming and blood seeping from the room, so not fun. One question that comes to mind is why You Huo's room remained empty. Could it be that he just isn't afraid of anything? I mean, it's possible. I think it could have something to do with his lost memories. It would make sense that missing some memories would cause a general lack of fear because you don't remember enough life experiences to actually be afraid of anything. After the punishment is over, they are escorted back to the cabin. While they're being punished, the others in the cabin are hard at work solving the exam problem. You Huo is extremely intelligent, and before he left, he gave them a clue to look for a missing knife. That's the implement that they have to use to write the exam answers. When he returns, they are almost at the end of this exam's round. They are on track to receive 0 points, but at the last minute, You Huo writes solution as an exam answer. This allows everyone to survive that round, but the rules are that examinees that were punished by detention can't give answers for that round, so You Huo is taken back to the detention center for another round of punishment. Here, we learn something interesting. When You Huo talks to the invigilators, we learn that all invigilators used to be former examinees who have successfully completed all of the exams. There must be a lot of people who take this exam, since the other two invigilators are number 154 and 922. And that's just among the people who have passed, so you can imagine how many people have taken this exam. The fact that Qin Jiu is number 1 means he must be extremely intelligent and competent. The obvious question is, of course, why are these exams happening? Could it be like Alice in Borderland, where people who are on the verge of death get a chance to live by completing these games? But then, why do successful examinees become invigilators afterwards? It could be that after they pass the exams, they get a choice to go back or stay. But I don't know the answers. These predictions are just drawing on other pieces of media. But it seems like the exams are on a pretty large scale, and that there are, as I said, many, many participants. And the book summary also says across the world. Although so far, everyone is speaking the same language. We also learned through You Huo's questioning that these exams are not paranormal related. How can this possibly be? I mean, paranormal is the only word I could possibly use to describe this situation. Looking it up in the dictionary, paranormal is described as impossible to explain by natural forces or science. So the only conclusion can be that these exams are part of the workings of the natural world or might have some sort of scientific explanation. I can't even begin to comprehend this, but we'll have to see as the book continues if there's any evidence to support this. Going back to You Huo's punishment, all he needs to do is clean up the room that the other examinee was in when he was in detention. Unfortunately, the room is covered in blood and other gross viscera, so You Huo puts in minimal effort and leaves a bucket of all that aforementioned stuff outside of Qin Jiu's office. Looks like You Huo's got some sass, but I get the feeling that no one quite gets under his skin like Qin Jiu. It seems pretty clear that these two knew each other, and that's even more supported by the fact that Qin Jiu also has missing memories. I think You Huo has done these exams before, and maybe him and Qin Jiu were partners. They seem to be an intellectual match for certain. With You Huo's punishment over, he is finally able to go back to the exam site and help the others out. His cousin, Yu Wen, and another examinee, a pregnant woman named Yu Yao, are able to get some points with their limited knowledge of physics and optics. But then a creepy NPC, also known as a non-player character, Hunter Alpha, arrives at the cabin. Turns out that this is his cabin, and he's invited everyone for a dinner party. However, one of the table sets is cursed. I won't go into too much detail about how they solve it, but You Huo kills Hunter Alpha, which actually works in their favor and gives them some extra points. And they're able to use refraction on the table sets to discover which one is the unlucky seat. Unfortunately, one person sat on the cursed seat, and once the exam ends, he is turned grotesquely into the new Hunter Alpha. That is some really bad luck, since that's also the guy who got detention earlier. All the examinees are taken to an examination service center, which is a place they can rest and recover before the next exam. Here, we learn some interesting things that give us more insight into this strange world. Multiple groups take the same exam. All the people at this service center have taken the same physics exam with Hunter Alpha. 2 groups can't take the same exam at the same time. This means that there's only one cabin, only one Hunter Alpha. However, there are likely other types of physics exams, so the scale once again feels enormous, since there are different exam service centers for each iteration of each exam for each subject. Additionally, who are these people manning the service center? They're probably people who pass the exams as well, but what determines if a person becomes a service center worker versus an invigilator? Very interesting. After many days of rest, they are brought to the testing site of the next exam, foreign language. Due to You Huo's excellent performance in the physics exam, he draws a card that allows him to receive help one time from an invigilator. And that means, of course, that Qin Jiu is going to accompany him the entire time during the next exam until he uses his reward. Of course, any of the other 2 invigilators could have come, but there is that magnetism between the 2 that compels Qin Jiu to want to be the one to do it, to the annoyance of You Huo. Also, they get a new group. Some of the group remains the same, but the others are sent to different testing sites, and 2 new people join the group. These 2 people have done multiple exams, so they have some insight as to the end goal. So we learn there are a total of 5 exams, and they need a score of 60 to pass, with the maximum score being 100. This is interesting to me because at the exam service center, There was a general store where you could use your points to buy goods. So it's very much a game of strategy and risk. Do you use your points to buy items that could help you in future exams, or do you save them so that you have enough points to pass at the end? Back to the exam, they are brought to a small village where they are tasked to answer questions about Dark Widow, what her name is, where her family is, and how many people are in her house. Dark Widow kind of is like a witch living in a cabin. The problem is that the language exam is for Romani. This shows that the exam has a degree of sentience, since the reason why Romani was chosen is because they had someone in the group who knows several languages. She invites them into her house and asks them to help her sew several creepy little voodoo dolls together. You Huo uses his instincts to say they should not listen to her. However, the two newcomers to the group don't trust him and get to work on the dolls. They definitely come to regret that when that night the guy who sewed the most dolls had his legs cut off. Meanwhile, the others followed You Huo into the forest to do some investigating at the local graveyard. It's hard to stop here when we are right in the middle of this mystery, but this is the halfway point in the book. I'm really enjoying it so far. The exams are novel and interesting, with unpredictable twists and turns. We get a lot of banter between You Huo and Qin Jiu throughout, and you can clearly see that despite the tension they feel, they're drawn to each other. There's a small budding chemistry, and with the backdrop of the deadly exam, everything is perfectly balanced in my opinion. It's definitely not the kind of mystery where the readers can guess themselves what's going to happen. We're just along for the ride. We're uncovering the twists and turns as the characters do, and at least for me, it's completely unpredictable. I don't mind it though, I'll just let You Huo do the thinking for me. The book itself has beautiful artwork on the cover of our two main characters, and while Danmei doesn't have artwork inside their novels, I noticed that they changed the illustrations above each chapter title according to the exam. The chapters with the physics exam have a small dinner set drawn above the chapter title, while for the language exam, there's a voodoo doll. I appreciate these small details, and I can't wait to see what the future books look like. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time,